If you saw the trailer, that is kind of a summary of all the reasons as to why I'm doing the project. If you watch the news, especially worldwide, in America, there's been some things in Russia that I've shown. There's things in Australia with the Aboriginals. A lot of people think there's a lot of systematic racism here. Even though it's 2014, a lot is still happening in our world in regards to racism. Can't really, justify it. You can't really say it's not there, but people are getting filmed being strangled to death or shot in the road, or people fearing living and saying that they want to leave a certain place because they fear it. People are getting worried for their sons and daughters and their safety. Not even just from, just because of the colour of their skin. It's perception that needs to change, is that racism no longer exists. I think it exists in different forms depending on where you are in the world. In Britain, it's very hard. I think a lot of people will argue that there's no racism. I can see why. I call it systematic. So it's very cloak and dagger. You won't get someone to shoot you in the road or clearly defy you as you don't like him. So it could turn into something like, interviewed someone, they said they always got this question, are you manageable? She's a black female, the stereotype of angry black female, and that definitely counts. For me, I guess what I've seen more racism in this country, probably in the education system, but how I see it is, the reason why it's kind of hidden is because so long as the majority is taken down, if we take down a few of our own, it doesn't matter. And I guess it's a mentality that's always happened in this country. If you can affect the mass population that you want to, if you take a few of your own soldiers down, it doesn't matter so long as the main cause is done. You've probably seen it, probably heard it. It's a strategy that's constant. You always believe that your ancestors, whoever came here, were slaves. Everyone talked about how there was a lot of black people, or as they were called, Moors, in the Roman Empire, and a lot of them have come over when they were settling in Britain, and some of them were black. The documents they are actually paintings. People paint pictures and you see a black figure, a black person, male or female, and it's like, oh yeah, and you see the dates, and it's like, so there were black people settling with white people in Britain, but you don't get told that. Same as in the Tudor period, I can't remember, I think it's John Blake, hopefully I get it right, but he was a trumpeter for Henry VII, Henry VIII. I'm not saying you need to talk about him necessarily in education, but the simple picture when you're talking about Henry VIII, oh yeah, there you go, a picture in the back showing there was a black person in Tudor times. Racism for me, where it gets systematic, is like we didn't exist until we were forcefully taken, and we're constantly reminded, as if that's all of our history. I've done a mini project in this, where I was looking at doctors and nurses, and I found Mary Seacole. They called her the Black Florence Nightingale. She wasn't allowed. She worked with the British soldiers in Jamaica, I believe, with her mum. Her mum was a nurse. And they worked with soldiers that were kind of brought over, who were injured. They would treat them, send them back. And there was a war. She done quite a bit in America, help with solving a couple of diseases in America. Came to London, lived for a bit, and then she wanted to go help on the front lines in Crimea, I believe. Our instances were all there too, but that's what she wanted to do. And they didn't allow her. They said she wasn't qualified despite her glowing references and CVs and all the work she did. And so she kind of had a setup plan. She worked with someone who's building a hotel there, went there in business, took supplies, they worked together. She managed to do what she wanted, which was help the soldiers even in her old age. Doesn't get talked about. Didn't get talked about when I was growing up. It's like in this country we're distant. It's almost like the British had no play in the transatlantic slavery. But we know that they went to Africa and they just basically put their slaves, I guess, around the colonies in the Caribbean. I think that's why a lot of people do say that a lot of the Jamaicans or Asians, people from Barbados or people from those places are African. And as that is, a lot of them will have African mixes in them. As that is true, that's largely part because of the British. That was their colonies, that's where they literally dumped slaves. If you still go there, you'll see lots of plantations. We've got a woman later on in the series that talks about a plantation memorial. It's a project she's setting up. It was an interesting project. Hopefully you guys can help out too. But it's about treating, I guess, the slaves more as people. They're not really remembered. They have no real gravestones. It's just about putting them up, remembering the people that once lived there. Obviously, it takes a lot of work and a lot of liaison with the MPs over there, but it's an interesting project. So when you watch it later on, I hope you want to partake in it. There's a documentary below that I put in the link. It's about the Aboriginals, which is weird because a lot of people, I find that a lot of some, I should say not a lot, but some Australians believe they should get out, believing that the country is theirs. But if I remember in history, people thought that the British went over, basically conquered, and then dumped their prisoners in Australia, where this was a land where someone else inhabited. But the Aboriginals should be kicked out of the country that is apparently no longer theirs. This is the problem. This is what doesn't get taught. This is what doesn't get shown. So then when you talk to black people, like, oh, there's no problems, nothing's happening. Talking to a girl about racism Ireland, she said, yeah, it's still prominent, it still exists. If you're black, you get attacked. Islands across the water, doesn't get talked about, doesn't get shown. Nobody really knows it's happening. So this whole project is looking at a lot. It's looking at how black people form their experiences. You heard that in the first week. It's looking at black women. I've focused on feminism. I've had discussions. I've learnt about it. It's not the whole free bleed burning bras as I thought it was. Feminists I've worked with have been really good. Wonderful people, very bouncy. There's a bit about natural hair. As you can probably tell, I'm ginger, which is weird considering that both my parents are from Ghana. Obviously I'm half, if you know Ghana, you know that I'm half Fanti. And I've realised with that tribe, way back when, there's a lot of white people moved over. The whole thing about black men leaving their families kind of ironic, because white men used to do it and set up families, have new families around their colonies. So they leave Britain, go have a family in, say, Africa. So in my case, it probably would have been Ghana or the Caribbean, and then some of them might have returned, some of them wouldn't have. But yeah, the stereotype is that black men are the men that just leave their children and go set up house somewhere else. It's all about helping and informing. So we learn a bit about slavery and the law here. So we talk about a bit about the Mansfield case as well later on. Got some poets, some spoken word, some interesting spoken word. And it's just throwing it out there. It's getting people thinking. This is what all this is about, getting people thinking. Seeing things in different light, seeing feminism in different light, seeing black people in a different light, seeing the history of British history in a different light. Seeing that, okay, maybe we don't need a Black History Month, maybe we might scrap it. But if we do scrap it, obviously throughout history, the things that black people have done to influence British change. For instance, the West Indians coming over and helping with the transport system, and the nursing system doesn't get talked about as a part of British history. There's need to be included in 1 month? No, you could teach that at your school. Walter told the first black British officer, do you need to consider that for 1 month? No, it's World War One. It's the anniversary for World War One. You don't really need to conform this and crunch it all into 1 month. You could easily spread it out throughout your education system. Talking about the Tudors, you can throw in someone, say John Blake or John Blank. You could throw him in. It mixes that with art. With music and Tudor time. There you go. That's your lesson plan. Gave you someone. It's that easy for you. If you want to look, it's that easy. But people choose not to. You'd rather give us the same old, keep us away from actual role models. I'm sure now in your classroom today you probably learn a bit about Obama and the changes he's made, which is all great, but Obama's overseas, mate. Can't really, personally speaking, I live in a country where we don't have a black prime minister, so I don't really have that kind of connection. Martin Luther King did his thing and he will be a great role model, but I don't have that kind of connection. I'm in Britain. What kind of connection do we have in Britain? What has the black people in Britain done? Quite a bit. It just doesn't get talked about. And that's the industrial thing I want to break down. I want to change the perceptions. Like, we just came here during one season, the Windrush. We just have slavery as our back. We got 1 month. The blog will be on. It's kind of 1 month, 3 weeks to 4 weeks a month. And it works, as in we've got separate weeks, people's experience, Women's Week, and an educational week. After that, the blog is open. If anyone has any songs, any spoken words, anything you want to talk about, anything that you feel I've missed, any role models, any events, let me know. We try to collaborate together. If you feel it relates, please do get in contact, because the whole point is to show that we're more than the melanin they show. We're kind of dirty, unclean, uneducated, just a past full of slavery, it's just negative. Everything they do and they show is negative. So negative that the police officer is allowed to kill. I know it's in America, but they're allowed to shoot someone, hands up in the air. That's basically surrendering, but you kill them point blank range. And it's okay, and people are actually protesting for the police officer because it's okay. His livelihood's at stake. But the poor kid wasn't even on trial. His family has to deal with the death. It's worse when it's someone of authority and you're supposed to trust. And that's how they treat us. Someone will go shoot up a cinema, but he gets taken into custody. If that's the case and that's how the law works, then by all means, but treat that throughout everyone. Don't just start targeting people. There's a bit about mental health. I read a report that schizophrenia is not something that's seen as aggressive, or you're not seen as dangerous to others, but more yourself. There's a report that says that nurses seem to find black schizophrenic patients more dangerous to them than any other ethnicity. That's what you get from being black, and that's what shows in the stats, and the employment and the stops and searches, and there's so much. And this whole thing is to show that education can be taught better, we can see ourselves better. We are more than what they portray. Our melanin, us being black, or of black descent, or having black in us, is never a bad thing. It's positive. We have done positive changes. We've made a lot of positive changes, especially to Britain, especially to their systems. TFO, you can say what you want, but there's no transport system like it. We have helped a tremendous lot. We have beautiful people. We have people with different hair textures, different backgrounds, different talents, not just educational but creative. Not just creative, but in the sports field, we are capable of a lot, and it's about showing that we are part of our melanin, and we are more than that dirty textured melanin that they keep on trying to portray.